God, I'm telling you, my dogs are barking today.
But man, my dogs are barking.
Well, welcome into the My Dogs Are Barking podcast. On today's episode, we are in episode 4 of our series where we are previewing Mississippi State's football season by interviewing a different representative for that team. On this episode, we have the Florida Gators, and we have Daniel Flood. And Daniel is going to be joining us and giving us a little bit of a preview in that game. Going to get some of his thoughts. But before we get to Daniel, I would love to say, Austin, welcome in. How are you doing today, man? Are you excited to talk about a huge game that is going to be the 4th game in the football season with Mississippi State and Florida?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm super excited about this. I'm so glad we get to sit here with Daniel today. And like you said, I'm glad you said it. This is a big, major game, a statement game, honestly, for both teams, I would say. But definitely for Mississippi State, want to get in a good scheme of things for the SEC play this season. And so what a better way than playing in the swamp in Florida. It's going to be so fun, going to be electric. I know that environment. It's always electric. So I look forward to it. It's going to be awesome.
And it actually will not be in the swamp this year. It'll be in Starkville,
That's right. See,
it's such a big game.
2018 threw me off because, last time we played them was in 2018 when we played at home. That's why I thought it was going to be in the swamp.
Yeah, and then the realignment messed things up. But
yeah, my bad.
Either way, we do bring in Daniel from the Gator Truth Florida Football Podcast. Daniel, welcome in, man. How are you feeling about where we are right now? We're recording this in May. How are you feeling about your Gators?
Well, thank you for having me, Landon. I would say cautiously optimistic is definitely how I'm feeling. It's year 3 of the Billy Napier era. We've brought in new defensive coaches, which is really where we've struggled the last few years. Our offense hasn't been great, but it's not been the weakness. So we replaced Sean Spencer and Corey Raymond. Both guys got let go at the end of last season, bringing Will Harris, who came in from the NFL for the DBs, formerly of Washington, and had very good defensive backfields when he was there. And then brought in Gerald Chapman for the defensive line, as well as bringing over Coach Roberts, who helped out as DC at Auburn last year to help mentor Austin Armstrong, our DC. So we're looking up for that. Last year, we had a very young defense. So having that young defense that ended up in the 70s, 80s in the nation in most categories and in the lower half of the SEC, we're hoping playing a bunch of young guys last year, a lot of true freshmen, is going to help us pay off. On the offensive side, of course, we have a 6-year senior and Graham Mertz returning. We have all sorts of, transfers coming in both sides of the ball. So cautiously optimistic that all of that pays off for us. Of course, 2 straight losing seasons can't really feel great until we see it happen on the field.
Yeah, and you mentioned all the transfers that are coming in. You got Joey Slackman, who played at Penn University up in the Ivy League as a defensive tackle, who is really good. An interior lineman, and Jason Zamdilma, maybe, possibly, could be.
Yes.
But very close to a 5-star interior lineman. Jameer Grimsley coming in from Alabama, 4-star. Florida, it seems like the talent is never the issue ever. I mean, Florida, I would almost argue, top to bottom over the past decade, might be the most talented team. Now, it doesn't, maybe because of coaching, maybe because of scheme, whatever the case may be, might not get all of the juice squeezed out of the orange, so to speak. But you think about this season, all these guys coming in along with the current recruiting class, where would you say that the kind of Florida alumni, the fans, are they at a point where that they feel pretty good at this point, or is it because of kind of the unstable ground that they found themselves on with Napier? Are they a little shaky, or are they more confident? What would you say?
To be honest, it depends. Florida's fan base is kind of split at the moment. There are some who are saying, it's fine if we're 6-6 this year. That's good. And then there are other people saying, no, it's put up shut up time. We need 8-9 wins if you're including a bowl. And a lot of that just comes from we've had two straight losing seasons. And because Billy Napier has really made a big deal on this offseason with the transfers, with everything that he does have coming back of We have so much more snaps is his key word that he uses a lot. So with all that returning, it's really we're not going to have that next year. So show us this year what we've got. Granted, we do have hyper talented true freshman quarterback DJ Lagway who's come in expected to back up, but with this year being like the prove it year, that's where you see the split is a lot of people do feel, hey, it's what's the definition of prove it? Some say we've got to do, a lot of great things. And then there are some that say, just get us bowl eligible in year 3, baby. So cautiously optimistic, like I said before, is really probably the fairest way to bridge that gap between the two segments of the fan base.
I got you. Just real quick on DJ Lagway, just seeing all his stuff, like what a get from Billy Napier, and like how I'm assuming he was an early enrollee. So how was his spring? Like, did y'all get any like insider information on like if he had a good spring?
Oh, from what I understand, practice, there are some days he was great, some days he wasn't. But we've had plenty of quarterbacks, notably Danny Werfel, Tim Tebow, who both won Heisman's at Florida, that maybe were not the best players in practice, but when the game came on, you saw a change. And in the spring game, which he was an early enrollee, in the spring game, he came out, made some incredible throws, especially for a guy who should be getting ready for prom. And here he is
Yeah.
coming out, pretty much putting great touch on corner routes, dropping it perfectly, which is not the easiest route. Doing some great RPO work and stuff that we hope to see, build on. Obviously, a true freshman's not going to be perfect, but it definitely was not something where it's like, where we came out spring thinking, oh, we're leery. We came out thinking, hey, this guy could be a great guy for the future. So hopefully he lives up to what the potential we've seen. But again, still got to prove it on the field.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, he's been there a couple months. He's supposed to be at prom. So like what can you really expect from just like in a high school guy, pretty much. So another question leading into the 2024 season, what would you say is probably Florida's biggest strength?
The biggest strength, and what's funny is I'm going to say something that kind of seems like it contradicts itself, but I'd say our biggest strength coming in, despite a bad O-line, is our run game. Billy Napier, for all the talk of whether he's a good play caller or not in Gator Nation, and then also you see Josh Pate nationally talking about it or asking about play calling duties. He's always called a great running game, and I think it'd be better if we had a better offensive line. But with Montrell Johnson returning 800 yards, it does stink that we lost Trevor Etienne, but we've got a true freshman, Jordan Baugh, who came in during the spring game, looked phenomenal. Like, there are things that you can tell just by whether it's vision or patience, things that you can just see starting in people. Also, we have Treyon Webb, who did decent as a third back last year. So if there's one area I could say I feel most comfortable or the strength of this team, it is that run game with a so-so offensive line. If that line takes the step like we think it will, it's going to be, just so much better for this offense.
And is there a particular side, like, is there a particular thing with the team that you'd say is kind of a glaring weakness? I mean, you mentioned the offensive line. Is that kind of where you would go with it, or is there another area?
Ooh, that's a great question. Because it's hard to tell. And the reason why I say that is the offensive line last year definitely was a weakness. With that said, one of our tackles from last year, there's a lot of talk how he probably should be playing guard, and that's Damian George, who transferred to us from Alabama. He got moved inside to guard this year to fill in the spot that Richie Leonard left when he transferred to FSU. We brought in several high profile, higher ranked, I guess, transfer portal tackles like Crenshaw Dixon came over from San Diego State. Also, we have Manuel that came in. So hopefully that will improve the offense or offensive line. And Jake Slaughter, who is one of our highest rated offensive lineman. He was his first year starting at center last year, wasn't supposed to be the starter. Unfortunately, Kingsley Eggleston got injured. So I wouldn't say necessarily that's where I'd go. I'm going to go to the secondary right now, only because last year it was so bad. I do think Will Harris will get more out of this secondary, but my big theme, at least right now, is until I see it, I'm kind of questioning. We have Jason Marshall, who was phenomenal his first 2 years. Last year did not have a great year at all. We have two safeties coming in, Asa Turner from Washington, actually three, DJ, and I'm DJ Douglas from Tulane, and we have Bridges coming from Oregon to help shore up our safety position. But I just don't know how they're going to adjust to SEC play. I do like them a lot. At the other corner, we do think it's going to be Moore. However, he's had injury issues his entire time in Gainesville. Also at our star position, we believe it's Sharif Denson, a few years start, and Jaden Hill transferred out. So until I see how these guys play against some of the high profile SEC attacks, such as I expect from an A&M or from Tennessee, because Josh Heupel with the right quarterback is always going to move it, I can't say for sure. So if there's one thing right now, just because of the unknown factor, I'll say our secondary. But hopefully that ends up being a strength and people will come back and I'll get all the tweets of, hey, remember when you said this? How dumb was that? So that's my hope as a Gators, not being sure of that secondary, and then, everyone coming back and saying, boy, were you wrong? And I'd be like, thank you for telling me that. I'm happy to be wrong.
Yeah, that's so true. Well, and sometimes it's not always about being right. Sometimes it's about getting it right. And
Right.
the internet does not believe that at all. They're like, if they're going to hold you to an opinion, and if not, but when you think about, and again, we're in May, so who knows, what can happen with each team. But if you fast forward all the way to September 22nd, and it's the day after Florida Mississippi State play, they're in Starkville, that first SEC game. What would you say if you had to kind of predict the headline for the next day in the Starkville Daily newspaper? How would you answer this question? Florida beats Mississippi State because.
If I had to say that, I would say it's because Montrell Johnson had himself 150 plus yards. Um, Reason being, our pass offense has been hit and miss. A lot of our yards last year came off of screen passes, and I think it was about 50% of Graham Mertz's completions were 5 yards or less, air yards. So a lot of dink, dunk, and run. Right now, we have questions about our receivers. Again, just like the secondary, thought that would be wrong. But also with the questions on defense, can't say it'd really be our defense. Questions at our receiver, so I'm not sure about the passing game and how much you'll say. So right now I'm going to lean on what I think our strength would be, and that's our running game. And Montrell Johnson having a big game like last year when we beat Tennessee. Trevor Etienne had 170 yards. So I think to come into Starkville, we would have to really show out in the running game to come in and pull out the victory. And Davis Wade.
Oh, sorry. So on the flip side of that, Mississippi State beats Florida. Why do you think that would be the case for the Gators?
Oh, that's a good question. I know Landon and I have talked previously about this. I would say, without knowing much about what Jeff Levy brings outside knowing who he is, so I'm going to assume that you guys are going to end up with a pretty good offense. He seems like a Mike Leach type guy that doesn't need much time to get a competent offense going. Like, it may not be year one and you guys are going top 10 passing or something ridiculous, but you're going to at least be, a threat to do things. So I would say it would be our defense not improving or making the jump we think it will with the transfers, with the new coaches, because that's one thing Florida hasn't been able to do under Billy Napier is if we get behind. There have been a few games where we've been able to bring it back, bring it close, but we really haven't had too many big comeback victories. The only one I can think of off the top of my head where it got where we had to play catch up with a good offense was really South Carolina last year. And that was a fun shootout, but usually it's been closer. If we get a little bit behind, that becomes a problem. So I'll be honest, I'm a little bit ignorant of everything going on at Mississippi State right now, but knowing Jeff Levy, seeing what he did when he is offensive coordinator at Ole Miss, at Oklahoma, I would say it's because our defense did not take the steps necessary. And I think he might be perhaps the best, offensive mind that we face in that first 4 weeks.
And lastly, typically speaking, around this time of year, people are thinking about their own teams and thinking about how their roster shapes up, and who's leaving, who's coming. So take some time for us to kind of paint the picture for our listeners, for maybe Mississippi State fans, to get to know a little bit about Florida and the Florida Gators. Like when you think about Florida Gators, what is a Saturday like there at Ben Hill? Is Ben Hill Stadium correct? Is that right?
Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, yeah.
Okay, yes. What is it like there? And then ultimately, what is it like to be a Florida Gator fan?
Oh man, so lots of fun stuff there. So a Ben Hill Griffin Stadium day, a day at the Swamp. For me, get there early, go in just to see warm up, see what's going on, and sometimes go to see friends. That's one thing I can say about Gator Nation is you end up with a ton of friends, whether it's the people you've sat with for years or even new friends that you've made via Twitter. So now you're going to just go talk to them before for the game, and usually stadium's a great meetup spot. But doing Why We Huddle for College Huddle, doing that podcast, talking to people about what are some traditions at schools. I've learned that almost UF might have the most traditions of any school throughout the game day going on, whether it's from before they start. Of course, the colors are chanted back and forth, which I know is done at multiple schools. We have a tradition where we do a cheer called Two Bits, which was started years ago by a guy named George Edmondson, who was upset that the crowd was not happy with the team. So he started an old cheer that he knew from his high school days called Two Bits. And for 50 years, he would go around the stadium leading sections. Like you'd go to a section, pop out, lead the cheer, go to another section, pop out, do it. So now we have everything from former players, former coaches, current coaches of other programs, student presence, whatever, student body presence, whatever, will come on, lead Two Bits for the game. Then we've got videos that bring the team out, including a great little shot of a swamp and Gators swimming. And then, here come the Gators, out comes the Gators. Of course, after the third quarter, we got two traditions. We Are the Boys, where fans lock arms or put their arms around each other, sway back and forth, and sing. Let me look. Sing this song right here. I actually have it up as one of my things. The fight song's the other one. And then after that, of course, Tom Petty's Won't Back Down, which after he passed, Scott Strickland formerly of Mississippi State thought, how can we honor Tom Petty? Let's sing this song at the end of the third quarter. And honestly, it's become one of the coolest traditions in college football. If you have not seen a video of it, especially at night, definitely do. It's well worth seeing. Next year, Mississippi State comes to the Swamp. Come and experience that. Even during the day, it's great, but at night, with everyone with their phones out, it's just another level. So there's so much going on, even when it's not the play on the field. And of course, the play on the field just amps it up more. One of the loudest stadiums for the last 30, 40 years. And hopefully it stays that way. There's talk of stadium reconstruction, but we'll see what happens with that. Fingers crossed.
Well, thanks so much to Daniel for joining us, giving us a preview of the Florida Gators and Mississippi State. And thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the My Dogs Are Barking podcast.